second of the month meeting of the Ag Advisory Board. We have a quorum, so if we would let Mr. Duncan do the pledge and then Mr. Whiten do the invocation. Call the meeting to order. We'll do a moment of silence followed by the invocation and then the pledge, as it says. Okay. Let's do a moment of silence, please.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you for each and every blessing in life, Lord. Help us to do the best we can, Lord, for the agriculture in this county and in the state. Just watch over us, all of our family members. Keep us well and safe on the farm and back and forth wherever we go. Bless us again as we do the will for you and the will for the farmers. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, let's stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Nate. Yeah. All right. Next is the approval of the minutes for July the 14th meeting. Let's take a look at those.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meetings. Any discussion? Motion made by Ms. Moxley, second by Mr. Whiten. And all those that approve of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. The minutes are approved. I don't see any public comment or any discussion, any public comment persons here, so, number 7 there, discussion of land trusts and conservation banks. Appreciate everybody's input on the letter to the county council, and appreciate Ms. Moxley presenting that. She did a good job. And thank you for doing that. Thanks for all the input. And I'll open it up for discussion. Any comments?
I have a question. You may or may not know the answer to it. Is there any update from Duke, the new, what's the agreement called that they have to do every 10, is it every 10 years? The FERC agreement? With the money that they're, the impact, the economic, or the environmental impact money? Through FERC, the relicensing. Is there any update to that since this?
There is no update on that.
Good evening, sir. How are you doing? We're just getting started. We're discussing the land trusts and conservation banks, Mr. David.
Okay. Apologize, just couldn't quite get here on time.
Well, it was raining pretty hard at times on me getting up here, so I mean, hit some water in the roads and pretty deep.
Who works within the county as far as that agreement goes? Who would
I
have-
will be working
You will
with
be
them,
working with them? So you would know. Okay. Do you have any idea what that's gonna look like going forward?
I do not. I know there's a source water protection, meeting mid-next week. And Duke will be representing there as well, so I can certainly, I made a note to follow up with them on that.
Okay.
So who is involved in that meeting? Like, I'm assuming it would be anybody that has any group that is like drawing from Kiwi, I'm assuming like Seneca.
Greenville Water is part of that, as is, City of Seneca. The county is represented, as is Pickens County, Duke Energy, and then,
6 Mile Water, I'm sure.
I would imagine so, yes.
What's the, what did you say, something,
Lake Kiwi Source Water Protection Team, if I'm getting my acronym
Now, does
correct.
that include the group, like there were several here that they mentioned it and then they were on the relicensing groups, are they involved as well?
I know that, let's see, Upstate Forever, AQD, and folks, all,
So
gonna be
all
in
the-
attendance, but I don't
Okay.
know what their, roles are actually at this point yet, as far as, how they serve in that relicensing.
AQD was the one representing that night, Kim.
AQB, that's what I thought, and both, so they will also be at the source water one as well?
They usually are, yes.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion on land trust conservation banks? You want to, or is it more in reference to farmland protection?
Well, yes, it's both connected, to the topics. Elise, we might need to reference this in a little bit, but could we pull up section 2-398 through 2-409 of the, ordinance about the conservation bank, to see what it says?
Is that in the backup, or is that? Gotcha.
what were the sections you said again?
2-398 through 2-409. The reason why I'm asking, aren't we supposed to kind of keep up with what's going on with conservation easements?
Might be more under the purview of the Conservation Bank Board and entities that house the trusts within them, but it's good information for us to have too.
Isn't there somebody that's employed by Oconee that's supposed to go out and review the land?
So soil and, that's under soil and water?
Some kind of entity.
Yeah, soil and
Governmental entity.
water, the, commissioners, Trent was just elected. It's under soil and water, and we have, I believe, 5 commissioners. Is that not right, Chris? They're in your building. They're called, what is called,
Not sure how many commissioners there are, to be honest.
but the overall name of that group is soil and water, right? It's under soil and water, and it's not NRCS because they're their own in USDA and soil and water.
I know what you're talking about.
I think it's Soil and Water Conservation District.
Yes, it's a district, it's commissioners, there's like, we elect, I think 5, but I could be wrong. But yes, their person there, that is where, you're correct, David, paperwork for all the easements are housed, and my understanding is it's under their privy that they go out and they do the pond inspections, because it's part of the watershed ponds, and they do the conservation easements, yes.
Well, the reason why I'm asking, and I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as I can, I've been trying to do my due diligence and research about conservation banks, and I'll be honest with you, unless you're an attorney, it's kind of hard to understand a lot of things. But in my research, I decided to actually look at deeds that's been deeded over to conservation, or restrictions through a conservation bank in a deed. And just by happenstance, I come across this deed that was deeded into a land trust in December of 2020. And the deed restriction, which is this, what I just asked to be pulled up, it says that the said premises, this is from directly from a deed, it said said premises are conveyed subject to the provisions of sections 2-398 through 2-409 of the Oconee County Code of Ordinances, such that the premises shall be permanently protected for conservation purposes. Okay, that's in the deed that the seller, which is the grantor, and the buyer, which is the grantee, agreed that there would be a land conservation easement on this land. So, Natural Land Trust Company come up with $500 and some odd thousand to buy this land, and the county agreed to throw in $61,000 and some odd dollars into this, which was a total of $661,000 that the Natural Land Trust Company and the county contributed to the sale of this land. That was in 2020. Then, in June of 2023, there was also registered up here at the Court of Deeds is a rescission of the grant agreement and waiver and release of deed restrictions. So I pulled this up and I got to reading it, and long story short, Natural Land Trust was wanting to sell this land to the U.S. Forestry Service. And the U.S. Forestry Service said they will not take any land that's got any kind of restriction on it. So they were negotiating with the Forestry Department for the Forestry Department to require this land. And as they were negotiating, here is a deed, a rescission of the grant agreement, and what it says, whereas the county and the Oconee Conservation Bank have approved Natural Lands Trust intended transfer of the property to the U.S. Forest Service as the final conservation outcome, and it has now been determined that said transfer cannot be achieved. The United States Forest Service cannot accept title to the property with the grant agreement and the deed restriction in effect, which is what we got pulled up right here. On over into this rescission of this through the Register of Deeds, it says, Natural Land Trust shall and does hereby return and refund the Oconee Conservation Bank the full amount of the grant, $66,100. That's what the county give as part of 10% at the time back in 2020 to acquire land for the Conservation Bank. And as of the effective date, the grant agreement and the deed restriction are rescinded, canceled, and terminated, and all rights, benefits, or obligations arising thereunder are imposed thereby are irrevocably waived, released, and of no further force and effect. Now, this is what Natural Land Company recorded at the Register of Deeds, who holds the title to this conservation land. And it was approved by Oconee County.
How many acres was it, Dave?
155 acres. Okay, so this is very confusing to me because I I don't claim to, I'm not an attorney, but I'm not 100% off my rocker either. I decided to acquire a little bit deeper, and I called Natural Trust Land Bank Company today. And I said, sir, there's some confusing words in a deed up here at Oconee. And I said, I gotta ask what all this means. And he went on to tell me that, there was gonna, during the negotiations, there was gonna be a dove field that the forestry department wanted to put on there, and according, maybe, I don't know, I've got to at least pull it up. I don't know if you can't have a dove field on easements or not, I don't know, but the Conservation Bank said that because of the restrictions, they couldn't have a dove field, so they wasn't interested. That's why they started falling through the land deal. Okay, so I brought this up to him, this rescission of the property, of the rights, or the restrictions of the land. And I said, I read him the paragraph that I just read y'all, and he says, yeah, he said, we're renegotiating with the U.S. Forestry Service for them to acquire this land. I said, well, help me understand. I said, this paragraph says that you're willing to relinquish all the restrictions on this land. He says, yeah, we are. I said, the conservation, he said, we're gonna release everything so they can have a dove field up there. And I said, sir, a deed is a powerful document that has legal wording and that holds up in courts. He said, well, we are renegotiating so that the Forest Service can have this. And I said, you're telling me that y'all are gonna relinquish these conservation restrictions? He said, yes, on the phone just 30 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago. So I know we're here talking about conservation banks. I don't know about conservation banks until I find a whole lot more information about it. How can you, I'll give you an example. If I have 100 acres of land and, if I bought 100 acres of land 5 years ago from a man, and I said, I'd like to buy it, and the man says, yeah, I'll probably sell it to you. He said, but David, I want this land to forever be farmland, or whatever, farmland, whatever. Little pink houses on it. We'll have to put it in the deed that I want little pink houses on this land forever, or I want farm to be forever done. And I say to the man, yes, sir, I'm a farmer. I'll agree to that. I'll farm that land. I agree to it. And we both sign an agreement, the deed, that that's what I was going to do with the land afterwards. Present day, Gary's in the grocery store. I meet him, and he said, David, I'd like to buy you 100 acres of land. I said, Gary, well, I'm getting too old to farm and can't do nothing with it. He said, I'll sell it to you. He says, wait a minute. I says, what are you going to do with the land? And Gary says, I'm going to put a dirt bike trail on it, and I'm going to put RV spots on it, and I'm going to let people ride dirt bike trails on the weekends and make a pile of money. And I'm going to say, Gary, can't do that. I signed an agreement with the landowner that it was going to be forever farmland, and it's in the deed. And Gary says, well, I'm going to buy it anyway. Well, I warned you that there's an agreement that you can't do that. But you buy it anyway, and you're going to find out you got some problems in the courts if you renege on a land deed. Land deed is very powerful. So I know we had a discussion about land banks and conservation banks. I don't want to put my name on nothing out here praising conservation banks until this is all cleared up to find out what happened. Maybe there's some more clarification. I don't know, but I'm wondering if the original guy who sold this land, who agreed to put it in the land bank, does he know about this? Because you have to have an agreement between the buyer and the seller. And you got to have an agreement to relinquish rights from the buyer and the seller. It's a contract, it's an agreement. A legal binding agreement.
To the forestry.
The forestry, they were wanting to give it to the forestry department for $1. Forestry department said, we can't take any land that's got restrictions on it. So In December of '23, that's when they did a rescission and waiver and release of deed restrictions. They want to release deed restrictions on this property. The deed restriction is this conservation easement.
Well, I think as long as it's gonna be in forest or Duffield, that's agriculture
Nope. You and I had
technically.
me and Gary are trying to do a land deal. He's wanting to buy it to do dirt bike trails. Can't. It says in the deed you gotta do farming on it. Or little pink houses, whatever.
But are they gonna be doing a Duffield, you said?
They were wanting to, but then they found out, Forestry Service found out that there's deed restrictions on it, which is the land conservation easement. So this is coming from the mouth of the Natural Land Trust Company in Greenville. I talked to them less than an hour ago. So if you and I make a deal, if I buy 100 acres from you and you say I want nothing but for it to be farm, and I agree to it, and I sign my name to that contract, that deed's binding.
Oh, yeah.
I can't, the only way it'll stop it is if Natural Land Trust goes to the original landowner who sold it to Natural Land Trust Company with a deed restriction on it. If he agrees to relinquish the deed, then that man's got to give back $661,000 that the Conservation Bank give him for that 155 acres.
Hang on, you said, so someone sold the land to Natural Land Trust.
Did
Yep.
they sell
And
it
they-
or just the rights?
Yeah, and the 66,000 came from the Conservation Bank,
From the Oconee Conservation Bank.
and the other
The other came,
100 and
the other $540,000
500.
came from, or $570,000 came from Natural Land Trust Company.
So just an independent company that bought the land. So 66,000 came from the Conservation Bank,
Yes.
added to. I'm confused about, usually when you put your land into an easement, you're selling the rights to the development. That's where that 66,000 would be coming from. You wouldn't be selling the land plus getting money. Usually it happens separately from the sale of the land, am I?
What do you mean right to development?
The easement is typically, you're selling, the money that you get for an easement is typically from the sale of development rights. Like how you can do oil rights, like someone can come drill oil on your land, you still own the land, but you've sold your oil rights to a
Right.
company. But you still own the land. So I'm confused about this sale to Natural Land Trust plus a throw-in from the county. How is that tied up in? Usually it's two separate things. The easement is a separate thing from the sale of the land.
Well, the important thing to remember is it doesn't matter who bought it, it's who signed an agreement of how the land would be used.
Right, but who bought it isn't the people that are holding the trust, the easement. The easement isn't an ownership of the land, it's just a ownership of the development rights.
No,
So when Land Trust bought the land, I'm just confused about why whoever sold it to Natural Land Trust for a certain amount, and then the county also,
the county put in 10%, that was their,
the county or the conservation?
the
Bank?
county, Oconee County Conservation Bank, it's got the Oconee name in it, I don't know.
So to me, 155 acres and 600 and whatever thousand is only 4,300 an acre. Sounds like they were selling their conservation rights, like their easement rights, total. And like Natural Land Trust, just like we had one here, it was almost $1 million. They still own the land. They have the carve-outs for the family properties and houses and all that in the deed restriction.
So Natural Land Trust is the one that got the easement.
So they have the easement. So who's trying to sell the land to forestry? Natural Land Trust or the people that actually
On the land.
own the land, cause I still think they own, did Natural Land Trust?
Natural Land Trust,
Own the
was trying to
land.
sell the land to the Forestry Service for $1.
So they bought the
Who
land,
did they buy it from? Where is this, what was this transaction of 661?
I'll read it to you. Know by all men these presents that the estate of, I won't say his name first, but it's public information, but I'll leave his name out. By the estate of person, by person's personal representative, the grantor, which is the seller. In consideration of $661,000, the receipt of which is hereby acknowledged as granted, bargained, sold, and released, and these parties does grant, bargain, sale, and release to Natural Land Trust, a South Carolina nonprofit corporation, its successors, and assigns forever the following described real property. The real property is 155 acres. So they bought it along with $61,000 of Oconee County money, or Oconee County Conservation Bank.
It
That-
doesn't say so in that.
that don't sound like my easement.
That sounds like
That sounds like they bought the land.
like Natural Land Trust bought the land for a reduced amount, saying that it was gonna be used a certain way.
It said it's gonna be reduced by what Elise has pulled, or Mr. Havling has pulled up. It says, right,
Yeah, for conservation or
For-
farming.
it says that the said premises, which is 155 acres, is subject to the provisions of section 2-398 through 2-409 of the County Code of Ordinances, so it's a county ordinance. So it's a Oconee County, I guess it's Oconee County money. If there's a
Yeah,
code
it
of
says-
ordinance, such that the premises shall be permanently protected by conservation purposes.
That's from now on.
Yeah, the only way that a contract can be stopped is Mr. So-and-so, who's, anybody can see it, it's public information, I just won't say his name because we're shouting it out to everybody. He and Natural Land Trustee had to go back and renegotiate because they signed an agreement.
Because Natural Land Trust wants to give it to the Forest Service
With
for
no
Dovfield, because
Right.
Forest Service won't take it. So the concern here isn't what's gonna happen to this land, because the Forest Service is getting it. The concern is that conservation, an easement can be that easily rescinded. That's what you're saying, right? That we're concerned that the Conservation Bank would so easily
Dismantle
Changed.
the contract.
change something.
They would change something. They're changing this agreement.
But then you also said they have to give the money back, the 66,000
I
back to the
talked,
county.
I talked to Bob Winchester, not even this subject. Like I said, for the past month, I've been trying to research how conservation banks work, and I called him to ask his advice and wisdom on it. And he said that, I asked the question, I said, what if the buyer or the seller reneges on the deal of what they're supposed to be subject to? He said that the conservation banks, whether it's state or local banks, can actually, as he worded it, claw back the money, ask for the money back. So my question is Mr. So-and-so who's sold this land, is he willing to give back $661,000 and renegotiate the deal?
He would be giving back 66 to the county, to the Conservation Bank.
The conservation bank has already got the $66,000 back. County give it back in December 2023. The county's already got that money back because Natural Land Trust, wasn't agreeing to what the deed says he's supposed to abide by, so if they give the money back to the county, but now they've got $500 and some thousand invested in this thing, and they are revising the original deed.
Yeah, it is concerning that you can just give the money back and change.
So it's my understanding, I started digging deeper. I called the game warden who knows about Dove Fields. He said there was some organization called Save Whetstone Creek who was protesting the sale of the land for a Dove Field too, because they didn't want lead from shotgun shells getting in Whetstone Creek. I don't know if that matters or relevant what we're talking about, but it's something that I just wanted to say. So, I don't think conserving land, if somebody's worried about putting lead in a creek, I don't think the Conservation Bank should be having anything to do with that. I'm just saying, I'm trying to make y'all aware that I didn't even know about this until I started researching. I said, I'm gonna go look at the deeds of this Natural Land Trust Company, and I found this just happened to find it and started reading. So, Natural Land Trust, and he confirmed on the phone, whoever the representative, what his position in the bank is. It's my understanding Natural Land is a bank, and the Upstate Forever kind of brokers these deals through these people. So if Natural Land Bank can change the rules and say, we can do away with the conservation, what we're subject to. It says right here that we're subject to these rules. If you agree to buy or sell this land, you gotta be agreeable to it. So maybe they have contacted the person who sold them this land and said, hey, we need that $540,000 back, and we're gonna have to renegotiate the deal because we're wanting to get rid of the conservation easement.
I mean, the person who sold the land should get more money if there's no restrictions on it. It's not returning the 500.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that would be the process of,
Yeah, the process would be, hey, we actually need to pay you more money because
We're
we
gonna
wanna
keep it.
release the restrictions on the land, and we're actually worth more now because there's less
the
restrictions.
point you're making is they still gotta go back to the landowner no matter what.
Maybe they.
What if he's
maybe
gone?
they have.
If he's dead?
He is dead, the heir has got it now.
If they paid for that land, the 500,000, and then we say 60 from the county?
Yeah.
Or they paid back the money for the county?
Yep.
They didn't have to pay back anything till it gets, I would think, till it,
This-
gets hashed out,
This
because
has to be revised.
if the bank's gonna pay it back to the guy that owned it, and then they're gonna turn around and give it to the Forestry Service for $1.
Natural Land Trust is a nonprofit, that's why they're trying to give it for $1. I think David's whole point, though, is in trying to research where we should be on Conservation Bank and what their usefulness is and how we all support them from what we hear to keep farming growing.
That's what I'm
And in
saying.
most cases, you can work things out to have a good relationship. What they just did was break the trust in David's mind of everybody who's supporting conservation banks, because even though it's going into a Dove Field, I know the man's deceased and it was his estate, but they got that land for a bargain, and now it's going to be given away. And you talk that representative of the executor into that, because they were probably carrying out the wishes of the deceased to keep it in farming, to keep it the way it's supposed to be. And now, Natural Land Trust, the nonprofit, is breaking the rules, is David's whole point. They are not playing by the game. And like Tessa said, now, whoever the person is, the executor, whoever, that estate, should be paid more money because Natural Land Trust is releasing it to forestry with 0 restrictions.
Right.
And
So, there you go. And if you can, and I think his point he's trying to make is, I'm sorry if I'm
No,
overstepping,
you're,
is if you can break a conservation easement that quick with the stroke of a pen, what good are they? Why are we putting our land in a trust for it to get broken?
Right.
I think that's where
that's,
we go.
yeah, I mean, are we, Oconee County gonna advertise this stuff and then this stuff happens? Are we gonna do that? I'm telling y'all right now, I'm not for or against conservation banks. I'm not smart enough to spend hours and hours and hours of conservation bank requirements and details, and lawyers have done this and that. I'm not smart enough man to figure all this out. What I do know is there's a lot of fine print and all this stuff. And, I guess I have a hard time going out here and promoting the conservation bank when I see this kind of stuff, because this is a deal breaker right here. Somebody's breaking a deal. And the conservation, the conservation, ideas right here are now gonna be gone. So there's not gonna be any conservation on that land. And this went on from 2020 up until right now, present, we're talking about it. They're negotiating, they're trying to get rid of the restrictions.
But they haven't gotten rid of the restrictions yet
They're negotiating. He told me on the phone, we're renegotiating right now with Forestry Service and Natural Bank.
So,
Natural Land Trust is negotiating with the Forest Service?
To continue negotiations to buy the land, but the Forestry Department says you gotta get rid of these restrictions before we'll buy it.
Did they officially get rid of the restrictions?
It's registered of deeds that's what they're gonna do. I got it right here if you wanna read it. Yeah, so the conservation's gone.
But it's not gone yet. Theoretically, it will be gone, but.
He said they're negotiating. You're right, it could fall through, but it could go through.
was there not someone from?
I just don't understand why they had to pay the money back.
Yeah, before it's done, why they pay the money, already paid the
So
money
that they
back?
could, they give the money back because the county was binding them to hold on to this. With that 66, it was a binder. And it was put in the deed. They give the money back so that they could hold harmless themselves if they made a new deal.
Is that in the ordinance anywhere? If they refund the money the Conservation Bank gave?
So who paid it back? The people,
The Oconee County Conservation Bank received the money back from Natural Land Trust. The 66,000, which was 10% of the 660,000. That bought the land.
whoever got the land from the deceased,
The heir.
the heir,
The heir did.
they own the land?
The heir's the one that made the deal.
And they may not know, is what the point is.
Yeah, the heir, the guy who sold the land, I mean, does he know about this? Does he know that his deed's fixing to be waived and rescinded?
But he's the one that got the money.
He's the one that got the money, but either party, buyer or seller's got to abide by the deed. It don't matter which one breaks it, the buyer or the seller, one of them broke it.
I don't understand. I don't understand. It's not like the one I'm going through.
That's why I was hoping that we had an attorney here tonight to clarify some of this stuff, because I may be way off base. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying I'm reading stuff that, like you said, I don't understand. It needs clarification.
The Conservation Bank shouldn't even be involved now, because
They're not.
the guy's been paid.
They're not, because they give the conservation back the 61,000. That's how they started working on getting rid of the land easement, the restrictions. By giving the $66,000 back, now they think they're free and clear to completely go against the deed that says the land deal was made based on agreeing to this. Both parties, seller and buyer, had to agree to this in a deed. So they give back the 66,000, so that loosened up their hands to say, now we can do something different.
It went to the heirs of the estate.
The other 66,000 come back to Oconee County. They give back, see,
The Conservation Bank.
the Conservation Bank in 2000 was given 10% to go towards the sale of land, okay, or easements. It sounds like they were buying land or rights to land, both, according to this. So the county Conservation Bank agreed to give 10% to Natural Land Trust to help buy the land for $661,000. That's why they give back the county 61,000 to 10%, so that they could untie their hands to change the deed and get rid of the conservation restrictions. Based on what we got pulled up right here, they're wanting to get rid of this. That's so they give back the 66,000 so they could untie their hands to do this. So,
But if the heirs is using the land right now, they don't really.
they sold the land. They sold the land.
It says.
But
that
the land come with this restriction on the deed.
Oh, the land.
Natural land.
Natural land
Oh,
trust.
the land bank bought it.
And told the seller they was gonna put it in a conservation easement, and they agreed, and they signed it. Both parties signed it. We agree that this will be in a conservation easement, based on what I asked Elise to pull up right here. So when the forestry department said, we can't buy land with restrictions on it, because we wanna do what we wanna do on it. We don't want no restrictions. So they give back the money in 2023 and put in a revision that they're going to relinquish the conservation restrictions on this land, so that they can have forestry department get it and do whatever they want to with it, dove fields, whatever. The forestry service wants to do what they want to do on it, not what the conservation bank wants to do on it. So I think it's a concern. I don't know if it is a concern. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that if Oconee County is gonna promote conservation ideas, then there needs to be clarification of how you can buy land with a conservation easement on it and then give back money to the bank and then renegotiate a deal without the original buyer agreeing to this. Because Bob Winchester said, if you don't abide by the restrictions on this here, said you can claw back, and that's his words he used, claw back the money, the $660,000 that you agreed to, that you sold it for.
Contract money.
Because you're not abiding by the contract, which the contract is a deed.
Okay, I found in this, we've got a, where'd it go? I lost it. Okay, the owner of the fee simple title to property which the conservation easement was purchased, where the original owner or a successor may reacquire and terminate or extinguish the conservation easement, whether in whole or in part, only by complying with all of the following: proving that the original conservation and or historical values of the protected land have been lost or substantially impaired by factors beyond the owner's control or eminent domain, obtaining unanimous approval by the OCC board, obtaining unanimous approval by county council, obtaining approval by the Oconee County Court of Common Pleas, and 5, making payment in cash to the OCCD fund of whichever is higher of the amount of the grant or its equivalent percent of the current conservation value. Equivalent percent means the ratio of the grant to the original conservation value as determined by a certified appraisal paid for by the owner of the fee simple. So there is
A way out.
a way out.
That's why they
And
paid
it's in
that
the
additional
paperwork.
$4,000.
Okay, so it's not at the register of deeds. I went up there today and looked for it.
What's not?
This revision by the landowner, and you gotta have paperwork to do all this stuff. And when you're dealing with transactions of lands and restrictions and stuff that involves anything in a deed, which I'm not telling y'all something every one of y'all don't already know, you gotta go by what the deed says. And so there should have been something up there that says, Mr. So-and-so, his heirs and successors has agreed to get rid of these conservation easements so that Natural Trust can sell the land to the Forest Service $1. There should be something up at Register of Deeds saying that.
This sounds like something that would be a question for the Conservation Bank, because they would be privy to this if this happened. And it is in their bylaws, I don't know, that it's possible,
Yeah,
as long as the criteria is followed.
Yeah, there's
So
a
there
way,
might be something on their end that they have.
there is, like you said, there's a way out of everything, but the original landowner has to agree to it.
And maybe that is the
No,
whole.
the original landowner does not have to agree to it.
Why?
It's in here. It says whoever holds the title.
I think to Mr. McMahon's point here is, you can buy out of conservation easements. I've got people I know that have done it numerous times. They're not cheap, but you can buy your way out of them. His point is, the deed itself states that it has to be an agricultural use. That's the whole point. It has nothing to do with the conservation easement part. That's been settled. That's been bought, that's been paid back to Oconee Conservation District. Now we're laying into a whole different battle of the deed itself. To change the deed, then yes, you would need the original landowners going back and forth with the purchaser to renegotiate a new deed on the property
Yeah, it's gotta be a new deed, because you can't,
to get the agricultural use taken out of it.
So is this a question of whether or not to trust conservation banks, or is this a
I don't think it
question-
has anything to do with conservation banks at this point. I think at this point, it's more of a legal deed aspect, if I'm understanding correctly.
yeah, my point is, does the landowner know that what he agreed to do in 2020 is being reneged or changed? Because he needs to know. He needs to know that the agreement that he made in 2020, he agreed that the land would be in a land conservation easement. That's what he agreed. That was the conditions of the sale. But now it has changed.
Sounds like a question for a lawyer.
But right there,
Tell
the
me about
evidence
I don't know.
Is that why you asked who is following up on those from the county?
That's why I asked.
Who's
Oversight.
Who is the oversight person?
Yeah.
That was the whole premise of what you
Yes.
were asking.
The oversight person would have been
Soil and water.
soil and water because of the conservation bank
Yeah. Well, but
contributing money?
no, because Soil and Water oversees, if you go look at what they're supposed to do, they oversee all of the conservation easements in the county. They oversee all of our ponds and like any waterways, watershed, all of that. They inspect those annually, or that is what they're supposed to do. I think in their defense, we asked for another person for them. I don't think there's enough hours in the day and enough manpower in this county for them to get to every farm to know what's going on.
Well, I'll give you just a scenario on this, just to try to make it as simple as possible. The landowner and the buyer agreed to the terms of the sale, which is conservation easement. And I am a donor of the Conservation Bank, and I give $10,000 to the Conservation Bank, or I give $100,000 to the Conservation Bank, and I'm driving up along that road one day, and I see a strip club or a beer joint up there. I'm gonna go, what the heck? What's going on? How come I wasn't aware of my money being spent to buy a strip joint? Does that make sense what I'm saying? The landowner made an agreement that that land would be in a conservation easement, and it's, if they make this deal, it's not gonna be in a conservation easement anymore. So,
Can we go back to F?
Well, Ed just highlighted this portion under the returning, getting rid of the conservation easement.
Yeah,
The
there-
eligible Oconee County Conservation Bank recipient shall have sole responsibility for monitoring the property subject to the conservation easement and for enforcing the terms.
but see, they give back the 66,000, so the soil, whoever monitors it necessarily doesn't have to go back and monitor it because they give back the 66,000. The point I'm trying to make is, there's not gonna be no conservation easement on that land that was, the landowner wanted to have.
But
That's
that's an
my
issue,
point.
that's a deed issue, that's just a legal
A deed?
issue. That's
Yeah, it's a
not-
legal issue, very
That's
important.
not a conservation bank.
Natural Land Trust says they conserve land, they buy it for conservation easements, I talked to the man.
Right, so it's a natural land trust
Yeah,
issue,
yeah, it is.
but
But-
they're an independent nonprofit.
But for Upstate Forever and Oconee County Conservation Bank has got skin in the game on
But
this.
they don't anymore, cause
They
they
don't
got-
anymore, but
And it's written within the paperwork, so whoever got that money and did that, all of the applications should have had to have done their due diligence and seen the stipulation within the paperwork. That's legally binding in there, so the Conservation Bank isn't at fault because it is written within.
I don't think
The
he was
literature.
looking, I don't think he was looking for fault there. I think he was looking for, the point was that one of the first ones he found was one where all the i's were dotted and t's were crossed, and then we came back within 3 years and uncrossed the t's and undotted the i's and started renegotiating from what a landowner, who, the intent, I guess,
Yes.
and the deed. And so now the deed, and that's probably why it hasn't sold to forestry even for $1, is because they can't get the deed restrictions off the deed.
Yeah.
So,
the landowner who sold the land has got to agree too.
Yeah.
and that is probably why it's in the position it's in.
That's right. So I'm just saying and Tessa's right, maybe I'm sure this is a Conservation Bank question committee. I don't have the answers. I'd love to have the answers. That's my whole point of the past 20 minutes of talking is I want to support whatever I feel in my mind is right to support, but I gotta know and understand it. And a deed I know is very powerful, and the words are very powerful in it, and you don't renege and you don't go against a deed, because you'll end up in a courtroom. You will.
They might.
David, is this federal funds coming from that bank?
The Conservation Bank
It's private money.
No.
It's,
Yeah.
it's not in government.
So,
The reason why I asked, because they love to use the term eminent domain. When I saw that,
Yeah.
Nobody can give a definition of eminent domain.
But
That's
this
a
isn't,
big-
that's not an eminent domain issue though, right? And the
Well, I mean,
Conservation Bank
it's in there,
is,
though, you know.
it's private money though. It's not any taxpayer money, it's not government money. It's just housed under the county.
and Natural Land Trust is a nonprofit organization founded in the upstate, in Greenville, South Carolina, to protect our natural resources, is what it says. And it says that's what they pride themselves in doing, is
Kinda like
protecting.
David was saying, though, if we're gonna go for these land banks and conservation banks, why is that eminent domain in there?
Cause federal, that trumps everything. Eminent domain is just the government's right to
Take your
So,
land.
put
like,
a road in if they wanna put a road in.
For example, Highway 11 runs straight through the farm, and if I put that into a conservation easement, and they come through there and say, no, we're gonna interstate it all the way down, then they'll trump out everything, and
Power lines.
Yep.
Infrastructure, basically, is.
for the greater good, Charlie.
I guess.
No, that's what they use, that that
That's the
services more
reason.
people, so.
That's why I'd like to request to make a motion that next month we invite Mr. Root and someone from the Conservation Bank can clarify some of these questions.
Sounds good. Got a few myself.
If that's
We could
okay with you,
launch the
Mr. Chairman?
meeting tomorrow, but it's canceled. I'm not sure why. We could always go to a meeting. Is ours gonna be happening before theirs? Next month?
Did they postpone it or to another date, or do you know?
This is canceled on it, so
looking at the calendar, David, and tomorrow the Conservation Bank was gonna have, they had a scheduled meeting, but it's been canceled.
Could a representative and hopefully Mr. Root come to our next month's meeting to help us? Because I get the impression that our board is wanting to spread this news that Conservation Bank is a good thing and farmers need to do it. We're here to help farmers, right?
That's right.
I need to know in my heart that I'm telling a farmer that this is a good thing. That's all I'm saying. And if I'm wrong, I'll sit there and say, I'm wrong. I had questions because this don't sound right. Now I know better, but I need to hear it from somebody. Conservation Bank, Mr. Root, the attorney. I need to hear that I'm just imagining all this stuff. Nothing there. I won't hear somebody say that legally. If I, not the board, but if I am gonna go out and tell a farmer that you should do this, I wanna make sure I know in my heart I'm telling him the right thing.
An easement. I think that's the big picture is our easements as binding as we have understood them to be.
Right.
Right. I think it's legal advice is what we're looking for
Yeah.
from the attorney.
Yeah.
I think there was a question about whether or not it needed to be an executive session. I definitely think it probably should be an executive session because we are seeking legal advice from him. And just like, I understand there's a document sitting over there and I understand what it's got on it, but we can't fully discuss it because we're in open session. I think we fully need the executive session to talk with Mr. Root if he's willing and if it's allowable. Because I think we need to know the right ramifications and what we're supposed to do, because I don't wanna step out of line and say something and then somebody come back, well, she was representing the county and she said, no, I need to know, yes, you can say A, B, and C, and you leave E, F, and G off the table. You can't, I think it would be a good lesson for all of us to know what we can and can't say. In regards to easements, in regards to even when we go out sometimes and people are asking questions, that's why I was always so thankful James was standing right there, because he had stepped in for me several times. When we're talking about zoning, when we're talking about what category do they need to look at going with, sometimes I think having that knowledge, because I don't wanna ever, I don't ever want somebody to come around and say, well, you told me to do this. No, I'll tell you what I do, but you make your own decisions. I just think hearing it from the professional, and he is the professional we all trust. Would like for him to school us on what we should and shouldn't.
If this goes through, I just think that the county should tell somebody's interest in a conservation easement to say, look, these companies that has these land trusts might come back and change what you agreed upon. We want you to know that. Because right here it is. Have a, what do they call it? Not a waiver, but what do you call it when you expose something on golly, it's left me. You give an honesty disclosure of what, a disclosure.
It is a disclosure.
Yeah.
You disclose what they
Yeah,
can and can't.
the county should say, the County Conservation Bank should say, even though you agreed to this, somebody might try to change it on you. That needs to be disclosed.
Well, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Wills, deeds, everything.
Yeah, but it ends up in court though,
It
don't
ends
it?
up in court.
Because the deed is
At
powerful.
least a mediator.
So,
That would be a good question for them to ask, tomorrow if they were gonna meet, but they're not, so, I guess the question is, who's gonna meet first? Next time, us or them? I guess,
I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
digging
what's
and
the-
researching, but
If the schedule stays the same, oh, okay, it did load. So y'all will meet on the 8th and then they meet on the 9th.
Who is their chairman?
it's a lady, I don't know her name.
It's fine. I was just gonna say, I understand they're busy as well, but maybe if their chairman could come, if that would work, or
Do
something.
we know who it was in 2023? When was the money returned?
It was, Natural Land Trust Company returned 66,000, they returned $66,100 plus an additional $3,900 for a total of $70,000.
So they
The
returned.
$3,900 may have been interest or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's legal fees, because they
Legal
did
fees.
say in the ordinance,
That
it would
they-
include, the return of money would include that ordinance.
But they've still got to go back and clear this deed up.
Right,
Yes.
yes, we agree.
So we need to make a motion to meet.
He's
So-
made one.
I was gonna say, he made a motion, but there
Okay.
was no second to it, so I
second?
would say, can we-
Charlie
You want to state
seconded.
it again for the,
Yeah, please state
Yeah.
state the motion again, please?
A motion to invite, a request to invite, a member of the Oconee Conservation Bank, as well as, our attorney, Mr. Root, to be at our next meeting to help us clarify some things, on this matter.
Could I?
Did we have an amendment? I think Tessa made a valid.
Yeah, if I'm wording it wrongly, then by all means.
Someone from 2023 is all I was gonna say, because the Conservation Bank Board might have a whole new membership
Yeah,
since
the,
that happened.
yeah, whoever.
So if we could invite
Someone from
the attorney plus someone from the 2023.
Preferably their chairman,
Yeah.
if they're still there, but if not, someone that is knowledgeable so that they can answer. Because it's gonna be pointless if we have someone come and they were just appointed this year or last year, and they look at us and go, I don't know, I wasn't there. We're gonna be sitting in the same position we're sitting in now.
So we had a motion and a second, and then a motion to amend it to include that person from the Conservation Bank being a member. Yeah, a member, or preferably chair from 2023.
And I'll second that if we need it
We've got
seconded.
a motion and a second, and amendment and a second. Very good.
And we just have to say,
Let his fingers catch up. And ask if you need clarification.
Second, use,
Mr. White? A second, and then Ms. Moxley made the amendment.
Okay.
And so we have a motion and an amendment to invite someone from the 2023 Conservation Bank Board and county attorney to our next meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that's unanimous. Thank you for your research. That was a good catch.
I hope I'm wrong.
I hope so, yeah.
Um,
Okay, might that include the farmland protection we had in mind, or did Charlie have something on farmland protection, or was that kind of included in the land trust?
That was what I brought up to talk about farmland protection.
Okay, so that's all good, okay. Well, then the only thing, there's two things left, the signage.
Well, I haven't talked about the farmland.
Oh, you hadn't, okay, well, that's, okay.
And I promise it won't be long-winded, I promise. And by the way, I had no idea I was gonna be bringing this up tonight. I had no idea, but I'll bring it underneath the, talking about the Conservation Bank. But as we're assigned to do is to try to figure out ways to help farmers, right? So, farmland protection, and it goes back to deeds again, what I'm talking about. And I wanna read y'all a sentence, and this is a very important sentence. The grantor, which is the seller of the land, further reserves the right to water livestock on these lands herein conveyed. Let me read it again. The grantor, the seller of the land, further reserves the right to water livestock on these lands herein conveyed. One sentence that was put in a deed back in February 1965. That sentence, 30 years later, became very powerful. And I'll tell you the quick story behind it, so it won't leave you guessing. In 1965, a entity or a entity come to a person and said, "We want to buy your land," in 1965. The person who owned the land says, "I don't want to sell my land. I got a farm on it. I got cattle. I got corn growing on it." The entity said, "You don't understand. We're going to take it if you don't sell it to us." So I won't go into detail, but the landowner got upset, said, "You're going to destroy my farm. I need my farm for my cows. I won't survive. I'm gonna take you. I'll fight you. I'll fight you over this." The entity wanting to buy the land says, "Don't take us to court. We can work this out. We will put in the deed," talking about deeds, "we will put in the deed, the grantor further reserves the right to water livestock on these lands herein conveyed." Every one of these words has meaning. The owner of the land who didn't want to sell said, "What does this mean?" The entity said, "Well, you only have water on one end of the corner that we want to buy. We will give you the right to herd your cows to water. That means you can fence the land. You can graze on it." That was the conditions of the sale, and this was put in the deed based on those conditions of the sale. That lasted good for about 30 years. Along about 2007, right before the market crashed on all housing, in 2008. The entity wrote a letter to this person who agreed to this, the conditions of him selling the land, wrote a letter and says, "Roll up your fence, roll up your barbed wire, get your cows off, we're gonna sell the land." 30 years later now, 35 years later, the owner, the person who sold the land says, "Have you looked at the deed? What the deed says?" The entity responds back and says, "Oh, we have, and that's just a cloud." That was the quote. That the entity was a lawyer at that time, said this one sentence is just a cloud. Well, 35 years later, that cloud turned into a Category 5 hurricane. In the courts, it was decided that because the person had a right to water livestock on these lands, not a little bit of land, not a land over here, not 30 foot on these lands, which meant all the land. If a house was built and there was a swimming pool in the backyard, the landowner had a right to herd his hogs and water out of that swimming pool because of what this said. And this and 5 attorneys, high-powered attorneys from Columbia, South Carolina to Charlotte, North Carolina, couldn't do nothing with this sentence. And so only until, and that's why it's so crazy, because what we talked about a little while ago applies right here. You've got to have the landowner to agree to change something, who sold it to you. And that one sentence right there stopped 2 multi-million-dollar land developments. That one sentence right there. Only until the original landowner who was forced to sell it had to agree to get rid of that one sentence. And then the multi-million-dollar houses went up. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think that if we're having codes and ordinances about conservation banks, I would like to see us really talk about deed restrictions. If I buy 100 acres of land from you and you said, "David, I will not sell it to you unless you farm it," and I agree to it, that's it. That one sentence shut down 2 multi-million-dollar land developments, and only until they changed the deed. They broke the contract. So only until you, the original landowner, agree to change it, it can be changed. I know this for a fact. It's all in records. What I'm telling y'all is not a fake fantasy story. It's real. Happened right here in Oconee County. So I want us, I hope that we can start explaining to farmers, protect your land. You can put it in the deed. And then, you know what? That is an easement. It's your own personal easement for your land, and you've done it yourself. You didn't, I mean, all it cost you was the ink it cost to do that one sentence right there.
I got a question. How was they able to come and just take the man's land?
You know who the entity was, don't you?
That's like that eminent domain thing.
That's where I'm getting at.
This was so crazy, this case was, that the lawyer that was representing the landowner who they reneged on, that was forcing him to sell his land, the lawyer was longtime friends with the producer of Deliverance, the movie Deliverance. And he was in contact with this producer, and because, you know, Deliverance, they was showing scenes of Joe Cassie flooding and Chattooga River, and the producer was interested in doing something about this, but the producer died and the attorney got cancer and died, and all that fell through. It's just a little side note, don't mean anything what I'm talking about, but
Shows what
again,
can happen.
a deed is powerful, especially if the farmers, like where you live, Charlie, if you can get your neighbors to agree to put their land zoned in agricultural, that's powerful. But if you, zoning and land deeds, your land deed's probably gonna trump that zoning. You've got some serious, a land deed's powerful, okay? But if you have a zoning of agricultural activities along with your deed saying you're gonna farm, they ain't no development gonna come in there and mess with your land. They're not. I think we should educate the farmers to start thinking about, the county has provided you an agricultural zoning designation, and it's got a lot of good stuff in it. I've read it, the matrix. If the farmers in Oconee would just get together and have a meeting about this and just, you know, I don't like zoning restrictions on anybody's land. I'm a big property rights guy, I am. But there are tools. You gotta use the tools that's in the toolbox, right? If you did that along with your deed, you know, if you're willing to put your land in a trust, why not be willing to put it in your deed? That you want this land to remain forever farmland. I'm telling you, I know that 5 attorneys, that high-paid attorneys from Columbia, South Carolina to Charlotte, could not get around that one sentence right there. And it was just one sentence in a deed. That's all it was. I'm telling you for a fact, that's a fact. So if we're gonna protect farmers, let's try to tell them some ways that we can protect them as an advisory board. I'm really, you know, Charlie, I've been passionate about agriculture for years, about protecting people, of protecting farmers. And did you know about this, about how, I'm telling
I
you,
have been worried because I've heard, like I mentioned a while ago, if it come from the feds or anything, these eminent domain, they can stomp all over it. But I think it's different with the Farm Bureau Land Trust. And I wouldn't mind getting Richard Carr at maybe one of our meetings and explain how it works also.
it seems to me like you can't find the details until you're negotiating a settlement or a deal. I want to know what I'm buying before I sign something.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you have a similar experience, or you said you're going through something similar?
It seems to be more cut and dried than what the county has conservation easement.
It seems to me, like, just based on this, if you can just give the money back and change everything again. I don't understand that.
But see, in that situation, it's more like they're buying the land, you know, instead of the agricultural rights.
But
or
the land come,
development
the
rights.
land come with the details. The details was the conservation easement. You gotta get rid of that before that land will be freed up again to do what you want.
So I know with the Farm Bureau, you're selling the rights to development. That's what they're doing. It's gonna be an agriculture.
Matters which trust you go with.
Yeah.
The Farm Bureau has a host of lawyers that'll back you up.
Like I say, it's different. Maybe we need to talk to them someday, if it's okay. You know, if y'all want to. We'll get Richard up here and he'll go through the whole thing.
He's got a good PowerPoint.
He does have
Seen
good
it.
I just wanna get on track of trying to figure out ways to help the farmer.
I think Tessa made a valid point. I think it depends on who. It depends on if it's Upstate Forever Natural Land Trust. There was another trust somebody mentioned here as well. I think it depends on who. I think Farm Bureaus is completely different.
Yeah.
I know the state has one as well. I think they're all different in how they're A, funded, and B, how they negotiate their terms. And of course, for Charlie's sake, like dealing with Farm Bureau, it's gonna have, and Tessa said it, all the attorneys have already put everything in there that's going to be what a farmer needs to be. Whether it's a poultry production, commercial or not, it's down to homesteading if you had something small. I think it depends on which company, which trust you go with. If you go with Farm Bureau or.
And the Conservation Bank is not a trust. It does not deal with the easement itself. It has criteria that you have to follow to get the money from it. All they do is they have money that they can contribute. And there's a state conservation bank. I think that the Farm Bureau goes through them a lot of the time to get money for these easements. But I think the mistake the landowner made was going with the land trust that they went with, not necessarily getting the money from the conservation bank, because that's just a separate agreement.
But I think a lot of people too, when you said the one name, I think there's a lot of trust put into the Upstate Forever guys. I think there's a lot of trust put into them. I don't know so much about the one that actually purchased the land. I've heard that name quite a bit. But I think that's where the difference comes in. And I'm actually, honestly, well, I'm not, but it surprises me that they would, in 2020, purchase it, and then by 2023, already be trying to get out of. That is more concerning to me, because how many people have entrusted that particular land conservation group, nonprofit, and then had a similar
Well,
experience?
for example, like Tessa said a little while ago, that man, 155 acres of farmland, he should've got $1 million or more for that instead of $661,000.
It's $4,300 an acre is what it came out when we were picked.
And I mean, you know,
That's a difference too, you know, I mean.
That's a big difference, and she's right, he should have gotten a lot more. So, and that may be why that deed's not changed, and that may
Maybe.
be the holdup.
that may be, because see, I don't know. I don't reckon
Do
anybody
what you're
knows.
buying.
What's that?
It goes back to what you're buying, you know, these people, I've talked to 2 or 3, and I got 4,500 acre, you know, when I did put this in this or easement or that. But you gotta read, what did you sign? You know, what's the bottom line? I know with the Farm Bureau, all you're doing is selling your development rights. It can't be developed, it can't be till Jesus comes back. I mean, that's the bottom line, forever and ever, amen.
Well, that's what,
And it's a done deal. But this, what we're seeing here, it's cross-legged.
you know why it's a done deal? You know why it's a done deal? Because it's in the deed. Now, I
I'm
also,
not selling my land, I'm just selling development.
but I promise you it'll be in the deed.
But he's done this. Mr. Wright has, his land
It's
is
in your deed,
in
though.
a trust,
But
an easement. And he tailored that to what he wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But does your deed not say what's in that land trust?
All I did is sell my development rights.
But it's in the deed.
There is no, all it is a trust. See,
Yeah, it
this,
hadn't changed hands yet.
no,
It's in,
It
so
would
there's
be
no
in the deed
deed.
that you sold.
It would be connected to the deed when he passes it on, or when he sells it. When it changes hands,
Right.
then it will have to be
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, David, yes, it will be in the deed.
Yeah.
And that will be what will protect it as he moves.
That's what I'm
forward.
talking about. Everything, when it comes to this kind of stuff, goes into some kind of a contract, more than likely a deed.
because that's looking more like they sold the land too.
They did.
They did. They
did.
sold it, but they used Oconee County Conservation Bank to make the deal. And then they're backing out. This land trust is backing out on the deal. The previous owner has got to agree to that too. You can't just change a deed on your own.
Not legally.
But speaking, yeah, that's why it ends up court. That's why they'll lose. But what you just mentioned on right there, when I talked to the land trust guy today on the phone, Natural Land Trust, I asked him, I said, we are talking about the conservation banks and I said, we're not getting any donors. Is that correct, Tessa? Not many donors?
The main issue was with the updated ordinance. And
But we're
there's not a lot of funding.
There's not a lot of
into
funding.
it, no.
So I asked this guy, Natural Land Trust Company guy, I said, are there companies out there that you could hire to actually go out and find these big donors to fill our conservation bank up? And he said, yes. There are companies out there that will find the rich guy in Seattle, Washington that will give $1 million to put in here. And there's a guy in California that'll be a rich guy. And he said, but they're gonna do it for money. They'll probably charge you 25 or 30% on every dollar they make. And I said, that's better than not having any money. If they're reaching out to, doing the work to reach out to find these people. So, I don't know what efforts are being made to advertise it for donors. I don't know. That's a conservation bank committee that would probably be able to answer that. But I don't know if there is much recruitment for big donors. But but I asked that question, and he said, yeah, there is companies that'll do that. So maybe we shouldn't be in the banking business and get some professional company to come in and run it if we want to make that conservation bank have $15-20 million in it. Hire somebody to find these donors. Just an idea, just a thought.
Who would, we want to invite those people to our next meeting? Would you want me to do that, or would you do that, or?
Well, certainly I will speak with the attorney, and get, Mr. Rude's, thoughts on that. And of course, if he's okay with it, he'll, give us direction as to how to do it, and we can do it, or he'll say, he thinks it should come from, chair of the Ag Advisory Board, and we'll let you know. And I did find that there's 4 current members that were also serving in 2023, so should be able to find somebody who can, provide some insight.
And if he elects to suggest an executive session, would we like to do that before the meeting or after this meeting, or?
Well, I would think, what you would do is go into executive session during the meeting.
Okay.
We'll have to.
You call the meeting to order, executive session would be on that. You would invite those people that are relevant to the conversation at hand. So if we have those folks in the audience, you can name them by name and bring them to the executive session along with the attorney. And anybody else you so deem to be valuable to that discussion, and do it right there.
That would answer a lot of questions, wouldn't it?
Not to confuse him with the same evening, but I agree Mr. Carr would be a good source. Would you like to put that in the form of a motion to, like, in a future meeting, not the same one we're talking here, but
Have
in
him
a
come
future
and-
meeting, we'll invite him to come?
have him
and we'll
come
check
and
his
address
schedules.
about Farm Bureau Land Trust.
If he's gonna come up, we've had him come out before to speak. The Food Council had a breakfast in 2023
That was the Oakwood, wasn't
at Oakway. Had a good turnout. He did a PowerPoint about conservation easements in the Farm Bureau. If we were to bring him out, would we want to advertise something for other folks who would be interested to see this presentation, who are interested in the material for their own purposes? Farmers and whatnot.
I think we should.
Would you wanna have it here, or maybe at the Ag Center, or some other place?
Maybe at the Farm Center.
Farm Center?
If we could organize it with them. This is really not probably the time for it, but I was really disappointed that we could not attend what they're doing
Yeah.
tonight at the Farm Center. So, under my district report, I was just gonna make a suggestion. I know this year everything is set, but in the future, I would like to see our board make a concerted effort to maybe change our date of when we meet, so that we're not on top of their meeting, and we could attend more things and work with the Farm Center, because I think Daniel is doing an amazing job. I went to the farmer's market the other day, he's filled up all of they're gonna have to expand, everything was full, he was doing a great job. I have nothing negative to say there, but it's really hard to support him when we meet at the same time as a lot of their events, or it's on top of their board meeting. I think we should make an effort as a board personally, to change our day so that we can attend and support them more. And that's just my personal
He
opinion.
and I've had that discussion, and they don't want to change their meeting night, and I told him I don't know what freedom we have to change our meeting night, because y'all have meetings, several meetings during the week, and ours is Monday night for whatever reason. So what would it take to change the meeting night for us?
It would be obviously a discussion among you all. I can, look into what days are free, because yes, there are a lot of other meetings that happen in this room, to make sure that this room is consistently available, for the year. And then when, I know towards the end of the year, we'll bring you the dates for next year. And y'all will all vote on them. At that point, you would then vote to change the date to, or the day, to, every third Thursday, or whatever the case may be.
And that's what I was saying, is if we could look at changing our meeting, because I know, and even before Daniel, when I questioned, I was, told that it was hard for them to change, because a lot of their people work on their board and different things, and that day just works the best for them. But I think if there's any way we can change our meeting day, I would like for us to be open to that, is all I was saying, if possible. I know we can't for this year, but when next year comes around, if we could look at it, because I don't think we have any changes coming next year, so it'll be all of us. So if we could look at it so that we could be more accommodating, I just feel like that's what we should do, personally.
My question, because I also wanted to go to that, and I had put a question out there about us attending that as
Our meeting.
our meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the rules about that are. Since we were doing meetings out in districts, would we be able to just change the meeting location instead of the meeting time, and say we're meeting at the Farm Center for?
So I think if they know in time, and they can advertise it before our agenda comes out, my understanding is, according to statute and what we're supposed to follow, is we have to advertise it 3 days prior, or is it a week prior?
3 business days.
3 business days
Well,
prior.
Technically, 5 days.
So
It's
if
5
we
days.
know a week in advance and our chairman so chooses, and there's a quorum, we can change to go to that.
So I say 5 days, but yes, it would be 3 business days because we put out the agenda Wednesday of the following week. So like y'all's agenda went out last Wednesday, was publicized last Wednesday for tonight's meeting. So yes, that is correct, 3 business days, I apologize, I'm sorry.
So we could theoretically, if the farm center has a calendar, or if we know about something like that would have been helpful, even just, they had a speaker coming that was just gonna help people know how to, better communicate with the community about what the farm center is and what they do, and all this stuff that would also have just been good tools for the ag board in general.
Are y'all aware of what she's talking about? The farm center's hosting this national fair guy that's talking about the community, the fairs are the center of the community. And he's talking about promotion of community and those different things, not just agriculture, but the whole community. And they're doing a workshop tonight, is the beginning, and then they're doing, I think, a month's worth. I don't know the schedule, but are y'all aware of that? We're invited to it. We just go on the farm website and sign up and go to it. But, I heard the speaker, he was wonderful. He's talking about the fair, the farms center like being the hub of the community in general. So, that's worthy.
I just felt bad because I felt like we should be there to support Daniel and the farm center. They've worked really hard. They've done a lot of great things. It looks great out there. Nothing negative, and it just, so I know I've talked to them in the past too, Rex, and I know it's hard for them to change their date. They didn't want to change, so my thought process was, don't ask again. Let's see what we can do the next time at the beginning to change our date to be more accommodating. That's all. And if I need to make that an emotion, I'll be happy to, but I don't think we're gonna do our calendar till the end.
If
so.
she can let us know what's some good
Or unless we could-
possibilities.
Unless, like a special meeting
Yeah, I
they're
was just
having,
thinking,
if we could just
Just
change,
change location.
just
Yeah.
have our meeting down there.
And if that's gonna be going on for a month and there's something else, then maybe that's what we should do, is just change our meeting to the next. But don't you have something coming up on the 15th? It's a different Monday, the Farm Bureau.
Yeah, we meet the 16th,
Oh, I thought it was the 15th.
this Saturday. So we're gonna get the farm stuff.
For the appreciation dinner? I got the wrong day. I'm so sorry. I read it wrong on my notes.
Let's jump back to the sign thing. It was brought up to let's try to finalize the verbiage on
Chairman?
the sign.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman?
gonna make a motion, sorry.
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Just to finish up about the, are we on signage right now?
If y'all are, yeah, we're ready for.
We're-
I
the-
don't think he's finished.
The farmland protection, we got switched around a little bit, but I'll finish right now with this. Can I, since I provided backup material to be presented today, we're running out of time, is this proper for me to ask that we continue this at our next meeting? Because I want to bring up the pros and cons of farm deed restrictions. And and that's why I provided the backup material to talk about tonight, but we're running out of time.
I think that's fine. Yeah.
So it could be added without me, it'll be automatically added next month.
Well,
to
we can just,
continue.
agenda items, put it down, continued discussion of.
Okay, I'll do that then, because I just want to point out some important facts, the pros and cons of farm deed restrictions.
And then we can have time to gather more information. Everybody can look up
Yeah.
what they need to, and that's great.
So that's all, that's why I'm done with that.
Okay, well, real quick with the sign, we've tossed it around a good bit. Do y'all have any amendments to the sign verbiage? I think we said agribusiness provides 192,869,000 annual economic impact to Oconee County. I think that's the last I remember.
And that would go on,
Whatever
is
signs.
that where the farm center is being added on to the signs where there's already a sign directing to the farm center? Is that what we?
As many signs as we can get.
I
there's
think
two,
that's what we're gonna get with
yeah,
what we, the
Yeah,
resources we have.
I think with the resources, that it's gonna have to be the directional signs to the farm center is probably all we're gonna get approved from DOT, is the way I understand it.
When is the next census?
I was thinking about that today. It seems like it's overdue.
The next census?
Ag census,
Ag
Oh, I'm
census?
sorry.
not people census,
The,
but
they just put out
22?
was it the beginning of this year or last year? They just put one out.
We got,
For,
it was probably
For a
20,
while.
20, it
Right,
was
yeah,
probably
yeah.
17 and 22. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
they're probably just getting around to releasing 22. I'm-
Yes.
I'm thinking. They do
Well,
it every
that's,
5
that
years.
one's from 22, isn't it?
yeah,
That number.
the number you
Yeah.
used is
Yeah.
22.
It's from the last.
And
that
that's
we
our
had.
most recent, yeah. So we probably won't get another one for a while. So that's our most updated, and it will be for a while.
So that I understand, we've already agreed on something for a sign then? I
We're
thought,
doing it right now.
Yeah, we're hashing down to the final wording we want to put on.
okay, I thought you wanted us to do homework and
Well,
come
we
up with the
did, we
sign
asked for
design.
designs and, yeah, we're gonna be limited by what they'll let us do, but,
I mean,
what do you have?
that's my design for every corner in Oconee County. You wanted us to do a sign
Right.
homework, but if there's gonna be percentages and stuff on there, then this wouldn't work, so.
That's a good one. I think the dollar amount will catch some attention, though. It's, you know, nearly $200 million.
I like that.
I do too.
Well,
You wanna look at it?
We can
I don't
figure out
think
how to
we'll be
incorporate.
allowed to do that, but I like it.
I thought it was something to kind of be friendly to people coming into the county, but
They had rules about
Yep, that's good.
amounts of wording, logo use.
Characters, there's
It was-
introductory, there's two different categories, and directional is one of them you mentioned. So they've got all kind of rules about the signs. But, that is good. We'll see if we can,
well, I mean, if you want to put percentages and censuses, that wouldn't work, but I mean, whatever, it's whatever, I'm agreeable with anything y'all wanna do.
It's 30.
Well, I got 11, if you could get the 192 million, on there.
That's not a fact, though. It's a sentiment.
Oh.
maybe there's a place for that one.
It's just, it's subjective.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's my
do and
only
some
issue
don't.
with it, is
Yeah.
that it's highly subjective.
I'm a
I
subjective person.
understand.
Some
I
support ag and some
understand.
don't.
Well, what if it just said, if we just took off Oconee County and it said supporting agriculture, and then it had the 192 million annually?
Supporting, what supporting agriculture?
I don't know. The fact that we have 192 million in sales, I'm just trying.
And what was your verb?
Economic impact, 192,
Oh, okay.
economic impact
I like the
annually.
word support, because it is kind of a positive, but I do have issue with the subjectivity of it.
Of the top, I gotcha.
I like it, though.
I do too. I really like this sign. but,
I have an artistic side.
Yeah, we talked about that. That's kind of what we talked about, one time before, Oconee agriculture. Ever how many and growing, that's what we talked about, putting that on, I think that would be good, also.
All right, well, let's put down some ideas and, put down our,
Or could we submit that to Mr. Shirley and let him send it back to us as far as space-wise, and that would give us an idea? I think that's what our holdup is he came with so many spaces, and I was counting, that's what Justin, I was counting.
It was 40 characters.
Yeah. and-
42 or something.
And that will be close, but what I'm saying is if you took off that, guess what I'm saying is if we sent him something, here's what we are sending you, not saying this is 100% in stone, give us your feedback, and then that way we would know. It would give us more to go on, that's all I'm asking.
Can you send it to me?
Yeah, you want this copy?
or electronically, and then we'll
Oh,
send it
yeah,
to
I can do
Mr.
it
Shirley and
Yeah.
Mr. Gilbert
I'm just
maybe.
saying that would get us
Say,
a little
here's some-
further in the
Sorry,
game than
old-fashioned.
where we are,
Okay.
instead of talking about it every time.
Maybe send both.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And say, how do we?
How will
Can we
these
put these
look,
together?
and what will this look like, and what sign are we talking about?
Sounds good. So we will,
I'll make a motion to send the 2 drafts for signs, for Rex to send the 2 drafts.
and I'll send to Mr. Shirley.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Motion and a second to send the 2 signs to Mr. Shirley, PRTM. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, that's it. Let's, do I have a motion to adjourn? Anything else? Oh, district reports.
I have a motion to adjourn.
You mentioned food council now. Is there any food council coming up?
We're about to just reconvene. We take our executive director does not, but the board takes a break for June and July, and we're about to reconvene and do our strategy meeting for the year. So that's our update.
Okay. Farm Bureau, their annual meeting is Saturday night, Saturday at 6, at the Farm Center. So Farm Bureau, next annual meeting's at 6 on the Farm Center.
The farmer appreciation is,
The 15th
15th is Farmer Appreciation.
is at 6 o'clock, and I would like to ask if we could go ahead and advertise that we will be there, so there won't be an issue with us being at that at the same time. There will be a quorum of us, more than likely, at that.
Possibly both.
Right. So could we please put a notice out?
What's the date on the farmer appreciation?
Friday.
This coming Friday?
No, the
No.
farm appreciation is
It's the
Monday, September 15th at the
Yeah.
Farm
September
Center.
15th.
At the Farm Center, at 6 o'clock.
Is there any advertisement about that?
And
Yes.
the
We need to advertise
annual meeting is
for
this
the
Saturday
advertising.
Yeah.
It says first I've heard of it.
Shoot.
at 6 o'clock.
I hadn't heard about that one, but that's the first I've heard about the farmer appreciation.
I'm gonna send you the flyer for the Farm Appreciation.
But-
When is the annual meeting?
This Saturday.
Saturday.
Saturday at 6 at the Farm Center's the
Yeah.
annual Farm Bureau
But
meeting.
that's also at the Farm Center.
We had a meeting, a resolution meeting last Tuesday, and, we're trying to get reciprocal setbacks in line to come back. It went to the house and got set back, didn't get past the house, so we're gonna bring it back. That's saying if you wanna build chicken houses, you gotta stay so far back, 1,000 feet, from a dwelling. But if you already have chicken houses there, and your neighbor sells, then before you build a house, it's gotta be 1,000 feet from the chicken house too. It'll balance out.
Put some onus on those people coming in.
Mhm.
Right. It's good.
And it's getting traction.
Hope it goes. Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn? Motion, second?
Second.
Second, all right. All in favor, let's go. Aye, let's go.